Hello folks, Jack here from Peach Guitars, and in today's video I get to continue with a theme that I've expressed in a couple of videos before this one, where I just get to sit down, spend a few minutes with some of the very best guitars that are currently in stock in the shop. But before I get into this guitar in today's video, let me remind you to like, comment down below with your thoughts, and make sure you're subscribed to the channel. Alright, so in today's video I'm going to take a little bit of a deeper dive, or a closer look at, if you like, of this, which is a private collection Fender custom shop H.A.R. Strat. So, very cool story to this guitar that's been expressed in a couple of different interviews with most notably Joe Bonamassa, who is the current custodian and owner of the original guitar that this is a replica of. So the story goes that in 1955 a local Texan musician called Howard Reed went into his local music store and ordered from Fender a 1955, as was current spec, Strat, but the one caveat that he had was that it couldn't be a two-tone Sunburst guitar. He wanted a black finish. And inadvertently, and probably unintentionally, he created one of the very first known custom colour Fender orders, and certainly one of, if not the very first black Fender Strat of all time. So just to put that into perspective, the millions and millions of black Strat designs that have since been created all stem, potentially, from this very guitar, which is a very cool story. The story itself is told very well by Joe Bonamassa. As I said, he is the current custodian of the guitar. So from that point on, this being the very first black Fender Strat, it kind of gained a little bit more momentum and notoriety in the guitar world. A few years later, when that very same guitarist, Howard Reed, joined Gene Vincent's band, the Blue Caps, in 1958, and they were a band that was well known on the Texan circuit at the time. Being a Dallas, Texas guitar player, it seems that form at that time and going forward, all guitar players seem to do this. Howard decided to adorn the guitars with his initials here, H.A.R., which I think are letterings from briefcases or something like that. Pretty cool little sort of touch to the guitar, obviously, to personalise it, but it also meant that it became particularly well known in guitar circles, including by Joe Bonamassa. And it was said in his interview that he had a poster of Howard with this guitar on stage with Gene Vincent and the Blue Caps on his bedroom wall, and he longed for this guitar. And eventually he managed to acquire it. So going on from the point when Howard was using this guitar, it was on a few notable recordings at the time that the band made. After his passing in 1981, the guitar eventually got inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, I think in around 1998, and it remained there for a good couple of decades, I think, until around 2013, 2014, when this guitar became part of a private collection. In 2017, Joe Bonamassa commissioned the Fender Custom Shop to recreate this historical guitar. Not just because it's such a cool piece of musical history anyway, but it's such a cool part of Fender's history. So, Masterbuilder Dennis Galuszka decided to take on the task of recreating this guitar in true Custom Shop Masterbuilder fashion, so every little factor of the guitar was recreated, painstakingly so. That's what they always do with these historical guitars. But it gave birth to a new form of the Fender Custom Shop called the Private Collection, in which this guitar resides. So hopefully you're still with me so far. Basically what this is a 1 of 60 worldwide recreation of that famous guitar that's not only been through the hands of one notable musician, Howard Reed, but now resides in the collection of Mr. Joe Bonamassa as well. of the 60 pieces of this guitar that were made available worldwide, only 4 made their way to the UK, and we were very lucky to be able to acquire this guitar. I'm really pleased though that I've been able to take the opportunity to sit down and make a video on it, because despite all that cool historical context that this guitar has, which is an amazing story in its own right and makes this a very interesting instrument anyway, the guitar itself is one of the very best playing and sounding custom shop Strats that I've ever played. And I think there's a couple of reasons for that. Based on the fact that this is a 55 spec, that's quite unusual anyway to see from the custom shops. And when you do typically see 54s, 55 Strats, as was obviously the case at the time, back in the day, they were all Sunburst, and that's usually what you see. You don't often see a black spec guitar from that kind of period. So the fact that the custom shop even recreated that is a bit of a rarity in itself. And I actually personally really like the sort of early mid-50s spec Strats. They've got a slightly larger neck profile. This guitar has the 1954 U-shape neck profile, which is really comfortable. And of course, as it's undergone the Masterbuilder treatment, it's nicely worn in, as the original guitar would be, I would imagine, with just the right number of sort of scrapes and divots on the back of the neck. In fact, all the way up the neck and the body, of course, as well. All the relicking has been perfectly paid attention to the details. So, also being a 54 spec Strat, you get a couple of other really cool aesthetic, just blunt details that I really like about that period of guitar. So it's a single ply pick guard. True to the original, there's a little bit of sort of wear to the pickguard here actually by this bottom screw, which I really like the fact that they've paid attention to that. When I say wear, I mean actually some of it's missing, which is cool. The knobs have faded as they would have done properly back in the day. They're also a different shape, volume and tone set of knobs here, which I find really comfortable. I find they're a little bit sort of speedier to access. And true to form as well, perhaps most importantly here, you have a 3-way selector switch, which I'm going to express my thoughts on that in just a moment. But coupled with these 55 spec custom shop pickups, the tones of this Strat just excel like no other Strat that I've played in recent memory. They're much punchier. They actually kind of sit alongside those of a Telecaster of that same kind of era. They're much more in your face. They're not so mellowed out like Strats became in the later 50s and early 60s, which is obviously a great sound as well that a lot of guitar players love. But I think there's always something to be said for these mid-50s sounds that Strats were capable of back then. They just sound a little bit more alive to me anyway, and particularly going for some of those early rock and roll voicings that this guitar would have been used for by Howard Reed. It just nails those sounds perfectly. I wanted to go back to a little bit more of a basic tonal setup today to really show off the capabilities of this guitar in what I think are its natural environments, which is that kind of 50s rock and roll thing. So I'm plugged into an MXR Echoplex preamp pedal on the floor. I've got a little bit of slapback delay happening sometimes from a Line 6 HXFX, and I'm plugging straight into this new limited edition Fender Princeton reverb amplifier. So I mentioned the 3-way switch, and this might be seen as perhaps a detractive thing, but I actually really like the 3-way switch as opposed to the 5-way that was later introduced. And the reason being, you just get each pickup individually by itself. It's really quick to access, and those tones become a little bit more paramount, I think. The fewer options you have, I really like the fact that you just go to direct sounds very quickly. It's very easy to switch. Again, kind of in keeping with the Telecaster. Maybe that's just me being a predominantly tele player, having that little bit of favoritism there for this switching option, but I do think it makes you play a bit differently. It makes you think about the tones that you get out of the guitar a bit differently. And it also encourages you to try out the technique that a lot of players were doing back in the day that led to the development of the 5-way switch, which was to balance the switch perfectly between the two pickups to give you those out of phase tones. So for example, if I go from the neck pickup, you'll hear I'm able to just slot it into the in-between sound. It is a little bit of a challenge, but when you achieve it, it's like a little bit of a hidden gem that you find. So here we go. So it's cool when you can find it, but as I said, I just like the 3 core sounds that this guitar has. And you'll probably be able to tell just from that clip alone, as well as the rest of the sound clips you're going to hear in this video, that these pickups just sound really, really alive. The notes are really round sounding. There's a fatness to this guitar that I don't experience in a lot of other Strats, and yet there's still this articulation that the Fender Stratocaster design is known for. So tonally, as I said, this guitar is pretty unique in the world of Strats, at least in my opinion. And when I pick this up, the things I want to play the most on it are just very strident single note lines. They seem to work really, really well on whatever pickup selection really. But for example, the middle pickup, it seems to ring out in a really unique way that a lot of other Strats just don't do. And it also, of course, chords very well, as Strats are known to do. So just an abundance of amazing tones out of this guitar, but I do think that it's got a personality quite unlike any other custom shop Strat that I've played. It's also worth pointing out that along with the three-way position switch, you also get true vintage 50s wiring, which means that there's just a neck tone control and a middle pickup tone control, so the bridge is wide open. And once again, I actually kind of like that approach because it's just the way it was intended to be. I think it means the whole guitar is a little bit more dynamic, and it means that when you go to that bridge pickup, you really get the full effect. So it's a little bit of an anomaly, really. It's such a good sounding instrument anyway, but the fact that it's part of such an exquisite and exclusive collection from Fender's custom shop, and it's been overseen by a master builder, I think this is one of the very best Fender instruments that certainly I've ever seen come through these doors. And I'm sure that whoever ends up with this guitar is going to be very happy, not only with it as an instrument, but of course, of the amazing story that you're ending up purchasing with it. But if you'd like to find out more information about this exact guitar, then of course you can do so by clicking another link in the description below and heading to peachguitars.com, where you can check out the listing. There's a listing video on there that I filmed a little while ago actually, kind of showing some more of the different sounds that this guitar is capable of, but today I wanted to just go straight for those pure 50s rock and roll tones that this guitar really pioneered. So that's it, folks. Thanks for spending some time with me on this very cool H.A.R. private collection Fender Custom Shop Strat. If you want to find out any more info, head to the website. Make sure you leave a like and comment down below with your thoughts, and make sure you're subscribed to the channel as well. Take care of yourselves, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video.